the Bible prophesied a one-world religion. Did you know that they've already built the one-world religion temple in Abu Dhabi? Take the time this week to Google it, and you will find that they have already built the temples for the one-world religion. And there is a doctrinal blending of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. And leaders of those three world religions, the three largest religions in the world, leaders of those religions have all been to Abu Dhabi. They were all present at its dedication, and they all gave speeches to how glorious it will be. A moment in human history unprecedented, when faiths from around the world can come together in perfect religious harmony, all prophesied by the Holy Bible that I hold in my hand.
So you have these dreams about a world without hierarchy, without injustice, without poverty, and which means, in effect, a world with completely different laws than the laws we recognize, that we are familiar with. And the idea is that there would be this magical moment, the revolution, or the crusade, or we'll rebuild the temple, or we'll create a new perfect utopian society, and it will be a moment of historical redemption.
And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and the dividing of time.
More steps towards the one world religion have just taken place on September 14th and 15th, 2022, with Catholicism and Islam pretty much coming together and say, yeah, we worship the same God and we're brothers and sisters, just different paths to a different God. This is all falling under the umbrella of the uniting of the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, of course, but not the real Christianity. It's Catholicism that's being united under this one world religion. The big event that took place on September 14th and 15th was at the 7th Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religions, and it concluded on last Thursday. But before I get into that, I'll briefly just touch on and remind people of the Abrahamic family house being built in Abu Dhabi, where it's a religious center for Catholics, Muslims, and Jews to all come together and worship all through the Abrahamic religions there at this one thing. The reason this is important is because 2 Thessalonians 2:4 tells us that the Antichrist will demand the worship of himself and his image from everybody, and anyone who doesn't worship him, these people will die. Actually, they will become martyrs, because the only people who won't worship him will be true believers in Jesus Christ, which is not mentioned by Pope Francis at any of these big meetings. So let me read a little bit from this article about it. The world religions leaders today adopted the human fraternity document signed by His Eminence, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar and Chairman of the Muslim Council of Elders, Dr. Ahmed Al-Taib, and His Holiness Pope Francis, their name, not mine, of the Catholic Church in Abu Dhabi in 2019. And this came during the 7th Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religions, which concluded on Thursday. Some highlights from the World Congress of Religions. We note that pluralism in terms of differences in skin color, gender, race, language, and culture are expressions of the wisdom of God in creation. Religious diversity is permitted by God, and therefore any coercion to a particular religion and religious doctrine is unacceptable. So, as you can tell, they're not saying here at these events that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, the Messiah, the only way to heaven, because that would contradict Islam and Judaism. So it's uniting. Everybody's giving up the truth here. They're all just coming together to get along, to give up the truth, which is that salvation is found through Jesus Christ alone. Back to the article, it says, we recognize the importance and value of the document of human fraternity for world peace and living together between the Holy See and Al-Azhar al-Sharif. And then they mention 2 different documents that were resolved and signed into place by the UN General Assembly, as well as the Makkah Declaration adopted in Mecca in 2019. And these call for peace, dialogue, mutual understanding, and mutual respect among believers. So it's really the uniting of all these religions under the fact that we need to coexist together. And yes, of course, we need to coexist together. But the problem here is that they're starting to aim it towards we serve the same God, we worship the same God. You know, these Abrahamic religions are just different expressions of God to different people, and that's an absolute lie. The Jewish people are stuck in the old covenant, not accepting the new covenant. Islam is clearly, the Quran was written 600 years after the Bible, and they're clearly ripped off stories Muhammad ripped off and manipulated to create his own religion in the same region from the same stories. I mean, Muhammad even demanded that the original manuscripts for the Quran be destroyed. Why would he demand that? Because to cover it up, obviously. So the one truth is found within the biblical text alone, within the Old and the New Covenant mixed together, the New Covenant, salvation through Jesus Christ alone. So really it was this document of human fraternity. It was signed by the Pope and this Grand Imam and adopted at the 7th Congress of Leaders of the World and Traditional Religions in Kazakhstan. It's the uniting of the world under a one world religion that the Antichrist will be the head of eventually. A glimpse of the 7th Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religion. Here's from Vatican News, and I was reading through this article and noticed something interesting, that Congress, the 7th Congress of Leaders of World and Traditional Religion, came to life in 2003 in the wake of the tragic September 11th attacks of the United States and following Pope John Paul II's second Spirit of Assisi meeting in 2002. So here's just another thing that came out of the September 11th attacks. Pretty interesting to note that. Worth noting about this interfaith meeting is that it took place within a pyramid. Kind of strange that that's their building of choice. Also, Pope Francis said that his goal for this meeting was peace and unity, of course, very similar to what we know in 1 Thessalonians 5:3. Peace and security is what they'll be saying, and then sudden destruction comes on them like labor pains on a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. And that's the whole point, really, of this whole meeting, really, and this whole uniting of these religions together. Not that we shouldn't get along, and not that we should be out killing each other or something, but the fact that they're trying to unite everybody under peace and security, that's exactly what the Bible says they'll be doing. Because it's dropping the truth that Jesus Christ is the way to salvation, which is the true love and peace that people need to come to realize, and just accepting everybody's false doctrines and false teachings for peace and safety, and that will cause sudden destruction. Pope Francis also said at this meeting that the best way to stop religious extremism is not through following the teachings of Jesus Christ, but actually through political democracy. So just enforcing the fact that what the Antichrist will have, which will be the one world government, one world religion. And again, Pope Francis does not mention the truth that salvation is found through Jesus Christ alone, but in fact says this, and this is from Vatican News on the article called Pope in Kazakhstan Religions Key to Building World Peace and Understanding, in reference to this meeting that took place. It says, in his speech to the Congress, the Pope began by addressing everyone as brothers and sisters in the name of the fraternity that unites us as children of the same heaven. He noted that before the mystery of the infinite that transcends and attracts us, the religions remind us that we are creatures, not omnipotent, journeying towards the same heavenly goal. I mean, out of his own mouth. I mean, the fact that people who are Catholics don't see that this guy's pushing for one world religion is insane. I mean, it's absolutely clear as day that this is what he's pushing for. We're all going to the same heavenly goal. That Muslims who actually have written on the Dome of the Rock building in Jerusalem actually says God has no son. And so they want to unite Catholicism with people who say God has no son, because it's clearly written, clear as day in the Bible, that you have to acknowledge Jesus as the Son of God in order to find salvation through him. Everything in the New Testament has to be believed 100% truth for you to find your salvation. That's the full truth is found within the Bible alone and within the New Covenant and the new teachings. And if you're giving up some of that to find peace and unity with other religions just to get along because you don't like disagreeing with people, you're in for big trouble. I mean, Revelation even says the cowardly are cast into hell. So don't be cowardly when it comes to the things of Jesus Christ and the truth of the Bible. Now, again, quickly worth noting, I'd have no problem if these people all came together and said, hey, we shouldn't kill each other and we shouldn't be warring with each other because that's not good. That makes sense. But when they're starting to say these things about we're all brothers and sisters pushing towards the same heavenly goal, and even though this was between Islam and Catholicism, it also noted from a Vatican source that Judaism was there as well as Buddhists. So we have this uniting of the one world religion that will come to fulfill the 2 Thessalonians 2:4, all people will worship the beast.
Revelation 16:12 says, "The sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings from the east." This prophecy not only identifies the judgment, but also gives the reason for it. So a great army from the east can cross the Euphrates unimpeded. Next, the kings of the earth gather to the place that in Hebrew is called Armageddon. Revelation 16:16. At that point, Jesus returns, and the battle fought at Armageddon will result in all God's enemies being destroyed. Revelation 16 verses 17 through 20, 19 verses 11 through 21. A significant event that leads to Armageddon is the drying up of the Euphrates. Are we witnessing the setup for the fulfillment of a major end times prophecy?
And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty.
Last month, Yuval Noah Harari, deemed the false prophet of the World Economic Forum, predicted that artificial intelligence would be capable of writing a new Bible, not before smearing the Christian Bible as an outdated book with no divine origin.
You know, the printing press, radio, television, they broadcast, they spread the ideas created by the human brain, by the human mind. They cannot create a new idea. You know, Gutenberg printed the Bible in the middle of the 15th century. The printing press printed as many copies of the Bible as Gutenberg instructed it, but it did not create a single new page. It had no ideas of its own about the Bible. Is it good? Is it bad? How to interpret this? How to interpret that? AI can create new ideas, can even write a new Bible.
He goes on to say that these new ideas within the AI Bible would be more correct than any other religious text because they're derived from a superintelligence, a non-human entity.
The Euphrates River's rich history and captivating tales are deeply intertwined with human civilization. One such fascinating story revolves around the alleged discovery of King Gilgamesh's tomb, an ancient ruler of Uruk. The Epic of Gilgamesh, recounting the life of this king, was a literary masterpiece penned 2 millennia before Christ. The epic tells us that Gilgamesh was interred under the Euphrates in a tomb fashioned after his death, when the river parted its waters. His kingdom of Uruk was located on the river's banks in present-day Iraq.
The Gilgamesh Project, the attempt to overcome disease, old age, and death, is the flagship of science. It serves to justify everything that science does. Whenever there is doubt, we just think about that and we say, okay, go on.
And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof.
COVID is critical because this is what convinces people to accept, to legitimize total biometric surveillance. If we want to stop this epidemic, we need not just to monitor people, we need to monitor what's happening under their skin, their body temperature. Like we walked in here, we had to go through a body temperature test. No, I think maybe in a couple of decades when people look back, the thing they will remember from the COVID crisis is this is the moment when everything went digital. And if this was the moment when everything became monitored, that we agreed to be surveyed all the time, not just in authoritarian regimes, but even in democracies. And maybe most importantly at all, this was the moment when surveillance started going under the skin. The biometric sensor. It's the thing, it's the gadget, it's the technology that converts biological data into digital data that can be analyzed by computers. And having the ability to really monitor people under the skin, this is the biggest game changer of all. with this kind of surveillance, I mean, you watch the big president, the big leader, gives a speech on television. The television could be monitoring you and knowing whether you're angry or not, just by analyzing the cues, the biological cues coming from your body. So now people are now watching us online, all over the world, this conversation. Now, maybe even right now, the people who are watching us are being watched and analyzed. And the thing is, it's not just you're now watching this. The thing is, we know that you're watching this, and we also know how you feel. Are you angry about what you hear? Are you frightened? Are you bored? This is the kind of power that Stalin didn't have. When Stalin gave a speech, everybody, of course, clapped their hand and smiled. Now, how do you know what they really think about Stalin? It's very difficult. You can't have a KGB agent following everybody all the time. Even if you do it, he's just watching your outside behavior. He doesn't really know what's happening in your mind. But in 10 years, the future Stalins of the 21st century, they could be watching the minds, the brains of all the population all the time. And also they will have the computing power to analyze all that. It's not just having an agent following everybody all the time. The agent in Stalin's days writes a paper report, and you have these millions of paper reports piling up in Moscow. Somebody needs to read them, to analyze them. That's impossible. Now you don't need human agents. You don't need human analyzers. You just have a lot of sensors and an AI which analyzes it, and that's it. You have the worst totalitarian regime in history. And COVID is important because COVID legitimizes some of the crucial steps, even in democratic countries. And for the first time in history, it is becoming possible to hack human beings and therefore also to manipulate human beings on an unprecedented scale. Well, long term, we should try to reimagine a different system, a different set of values, because at least traditional capitalism has brought us so far, and we now see its limitations and the problem it's creating, but we don't have the time. It's just too difficult to change quickly enough the kind of core ideas and values of a civilization. Especially if you think about the ecological crisis, we'll have to deal with it with capitalism. It's too late to try something else. So we need to be kind of very precise how to work with the beast and not try to work against it.
Find the facts related to the Great Reset at TimeToFreeAmerica.com. TimeToFreeAmerica.com. You can find the facts for you and your mom, filled with copious knowledge bombs. To find facts sober feelings like Spock, go to Time to Free America a lot.
And if you don't know, now you know.
It's the Thrive Time Show, it's where to go. It's the Thrive Time Show, it's where to go. It's the Thrive Time Show, it's where to go.